Good morning. It's April. Pussy willows starting to come out on the trees. It's a lovely morning. Still cold, the water's still cold. But I've come down to this lovely lake in Leicestershire, and today we're going to catch it with my old pal Jan Porter. He says he's going to have a day's fun fishing in the margins on the float. A fascinating way. I'm not sure whether we're going to catch some great big fish, but I suspect we're going to have some fun. Let's go and see how he's getting on. Here you are, tucked away in the corner.
Hi, David.
Morning. This is, it's wonderful, isn't it?
Yeah, beautiful day.
But I suspect the water's still cold.
Yeah, I took the liberty of taking the temperature. It's about 9 degrees, which is it's pretty cool. So even though it's a beautiful day, the air temperature's warm. But
sometimes April flatters to deceive, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, walking along the lake here this morning, there's no fish topping, but it looks ever so fishy, doesn't it?
Well, it's stuffed with fish. As you say, throughout the winter months, the water temperature drops and drops. I mean, I'd much rather fish at the back end of autumn than the beginning of spring, you know. But we've got what we've got, and to be honest, as soon as the weather gets nice, it's just nice to be here, regardless of what happens. But I've just come for a bit of fun today, really, and not.
Have you had anything?
I've had a couple of smaller fish. It's been a little bit slow, but I don't expect it to get better until that sun sort of heats the water up a bit, and then they will start to mooch around. So, yeah, I'm full of expectation to get a few bites.
So what's the plan?
Well, all I'm going to do today is go right back to my sort of roots, really. I'm going to fish waggler very, very close in, as my old man used to call it, pod lolling. I don't know if that expression's a nationwide one, but it's just fishing off your rod end, almost like strep pegging, and then taking it around the ledge of the lake, because it's one of the things that a lot of people ignore on the lake, the features. You can see trees, you can see islands, people plumb around and find different depths and stuff like that, but the one thing that's guaranteed on any lake, whether it's a shallow or deep lake, is that ledge on the margin. Yeah. Most commercial waters now are made with a ledge of about 3 foot deep as a safety precaution, and as a consequence, when that water warms up, the fish come on top of the ledge. So it's a great place to target fish.
Yeah, we tend to think of carp fishing as, particularly today where there's so many commercial fisheries, as big fish, but they're fun fish really, aren't they? You can have great sport with them.
Well, I mean, from the heritage that we've had, river angling was really our thing, I think. We did a lot of still water fishing, and so did our peers, but today, you know, you can come to a place like this, you can park your car up, you know it's not going to get vandalised when you get back. Elderly people, young people can come here, you've got toilets on site, so it's a great family environment, and you're almost guaranteed getting bites, especially in the summer. If you can't catch fish on a place like this, it's time to pack it in. But, you know, it's not going to be like that today. I expect it to be a little bit tough, but we should get some fish, and it's not all about catching big fish. I mean, I think there is an element in fishing today where youngsters come in and want to catch 20-pound carp instantly. My target fish is still a 20-pound carp, and I've been fishing for 40 odd years.
I think that's largely, you know, and I have to take some responsibility, the media's fault, because I think we tend to project this idea that people like yourself and Dave Lane and Jim Shelley just go out for big fish and just catch big fish all the time. And, you know, there are not that many big fish swimming around. You take what comes, really, don't you?
No, I mean, the lads you mentioned, they're pros. They're the high end of carp angling, big carp angling. I've got the greatest regard and respect for people who are prepared to do that. The fact that they don't catch for a long period of time, they target solitary fish in big waters, it's very, very difficult. I take my hat off to them. I don't want to do that. It doesn't make it wrong. I'm just more than happy to come down, get a few bites, and do other things in my life. And, you know, if I can catch a fish that pulls back hard, is in good condition, looks nice, then that makes my day, whether it's £2 or £20. Of course, it's nice to catch a 20-pounder, but invariably, you know, a good-looking fish is enough.
I think your float's just about to sail away.
I'm not paying attention, am I? Yep, that's a dig. Oh dear. That's taking me right over the other side, that is.
I see what you mean about fun fishing.
Well, there's one thing, I mean, whatever it is.
Does it feel like a good fish?
I think it's a bream, to be honest with you.
A bream? Yeah. Didn't come to catch bream.
Oh, hang on, it's getting a bit more dogged now. Oh, that's a lovely common. It's got a bit of ghost in it, like.
Cracking little fish.
Yeah. Now, I know you're going to laugh at this outsized net, but there is a method in the madness, really.
No, you know, I think that fisheries like this have been fantastic for our sport.
Yeah,
You know,
definitely.
At the end of the day, I've long held the belief that most anglers like bites. They like catching
fish,
don't
yeah.
they? You know, they don't all have to be 20-pounders. I mean, that was good sport.
Yeah. And the barbless hooks come out in the net. Absolutely brilliant. That's what you want. Well, the thing is, you know, to catch a 100-pounder fish, you used to get on a ferry from Liverpool and go to Ireland.
It was unheard of. It was unheard of.
And I think it was Steve Ringer said he'd had a 100-pound over 100 times in matches.
I can remember fishing at Attenborough, and I remember it as if it were yesterday because it was a red letter day, and I had 60-pounder bream, and I think for a little while that was a venue record.
Yeah. Yeah, David, what do you think to that?
That's beautiful, isn't it?
Yeah.
Absolutely gorgeous. And I bet you that's never been caught before.
No.
Fin perfect.
So belting fish.
Nice mouth on it.
And typically the ghost carp, they've got that sort of skull
smashing.
on the top of the head.
Smashing. And fishing on a little rod like that, I mean, what could be more fun?
6'6" rod. Right, I'll pop that one back then.
Yeah. If the man in red could see you now.
Yeah. Or couldn't.
For anybody who doesn't know, Jan used to be known as the man in red. That was when he was winning national championships and events like the John Smith. What was about this road to Damascus decision of yours to give up match fishing and take up carp fishing? Because you'd had a spectacular career.
Well, it's kind of you to say so. I mean, I did enjoy a bit of success over the years, but I'm ostensibly a river angler, and although I did enjoy some wins on still waters, canals, you know, Attenborough gravels as you mentioned, and also the rowing course, my heart was really a river angler. And in the late 80s and early 90s, the rivers just went into decline, and it didn't matter what you tried in your repertoire, you couldn't catch. The fish shoals consolidated. You could only catch on mincemeat and stewing steak, and you know, 150 peg matches, there was only 10, 12 people catching fish on a good river. And eventually it just took the heart out of it for me, and I decided to just take a break from it for a little while, a sabbatical, and never went back to it again. I did a bit of commercial fishing, you know, carp fishing, and I enjoyed it because it lent itself in those days, in the late 80s and early 90s, to spraying it with maggots or casters and hemp. But as you know, it's all changed now. Just
before you cast in again, just let's run through your setup. I mean, is this sort of standard setup for you if you're going to do this kind of margin fishing?
Well, it is, in as much as I saw a bloke once going around Billy Makins. They nicknamed him the Ayatollah for whatever reason. I called him Cat Weasel. And what he used to do is he used to go round after the open matches or club matches and look in the margins and see fish vortexing and feeding on the food that the anglers had thrown away.
Yeah.
And he used to go there and they were still packing up. And so he'd be catching fish, probably when they'd had a bit of a tough day, while they were still packing up. And it used to annoy him to the point where he got banned. He got banned for catching fish, in as much as they told him to stop doing it at least while they were there, because it would just upsetting people. But he used to go around each swim.
Well, if you'd had 8 pound and he'd come and caught 30 in 20 minutes, it'd upset you.
Yeah, but he came at the right time of day, and it goes back to what we were saying earlier. You know, if you go at the right time of day, and all he did is he walked around in a little tiny rod, about this size, 7'6", 8'6", reel, 8 pound line straight through, 8 barbless hook, and just some little bits of chopped luncheon meat, and he threw 4 or 5 pieces in, waited, chucked there for 5-10 minutes. If he didn't get a bite, he just moved on. And that's the way I like to fish these commercials.
I mean, this
sometimes.
is simplicity itself, isn't it? What you're doing here. I mean, what have you got? 3 dust shot under?
Well, I'm going to call it the Ayatollah rig then, shall we? It's 3 dust shot, 3 number 8 lead shot. That's the biggest we can use. It's got a barbless size 8 hook. It's a big old hook. I've got three number 8s there bunched together. I can move them around if I want to. And then the float itself is just a little trick I picked up ages ago, really. It's just a lead tail. I use these quite a lot in my fishing, with a tiny Drennan, the best crystal waders in the world, you know.
They are as long as you keep your box closed.
Yeah.
I remember leaving your box open one day, on a summer's day, and finished up with a lot of curly wagglers.
Yeah, they do in the heat. Yeah, you've got to be careful. But this is a tiny one. It's 0.6 of a gram, so it's about 4 number 8s, really, I think, in English. And that just slides over the top of there, so it's not actually connected onto the line.
No.
And there's a reason for that. It's not just because it's simple. If you do get a big fish, and this is really a safety net in case, and this big fish in here, they run 20 plus pounds. Now, all right, I'll get more bites if a fish lighter, I know that from my old match fishing days, but I'm prepared to sacrifice bites in an effort to get a bigger fish out.
Yeah, I mean, one of the realisations that I think we've both come to is that when you're match fishing, you're fishing for bites, and your attitude is, let's get the bite first, and then we'll worry about getting it out.
Yeah.
Once you start carp fishing and you start taking it seriously, it's a question of, I'm quite prepared to wait for the bite, but I want to make sure that I get it out when I get the bite.
Yeah. Well, it's a percentages job.
And the Canada geese agree.
Yeah, they're having fun, aren't they? They're not my favourite pets, I would say. But...
No, mine. No, mine. That looks like a fish.
Yeah.
Certainly is.
Oh, that's a bit better.
It's amazing how they run, isn't it?
Well, they'll just try and run out into open water. I think there's a bit of a myth. I know they go to snags, and you know, carp are renowned as chub are for finding snags, but this is scooted off quite well. I did cast a little bit further out that time. I'm patrolling that area over to the left. You see where all the the boards are? What Roy's done to this fishery is he's built that as a haven for the fry, hasn't he?
It's not another bream, is it?
No. Oh, nice. Hey, look at that one.
They're pretty fish, aren't they?
Yeah, they're beautiful. They seem to have tapped into a little bit of a vein of ghost carp. There's no complaints about that. They're just the prettiest fish in here. Look at that.
You don't need to be a rocket scientist to understand the appeal of these places, do you?
No. I think they can spoil you sometimes, but if you need a bit of a confidence booster, they're ideal, really.
Well, especially now, coming off the back of the winter. It's been a very wet winter, albeit we don't have the frost we used to have in years gone. Mind you, we had one this morning. But I think it's nice at this time of year to come out and to use an old expression, fill your boots.
Well, I used to call it bagging up in the match circles, didn't we? And all right, we're not using a keep net today. That's not much point, really. We're just having a bit of pleasure fishing. But you know, if you ever caught one of them on the Trent, I mean, everybody'd come and look at it.
Oh yeah.
You know, even if it's not a massive fish, everybody'd come and have a look.
But
just
also,
because it was something extremely rare, and now they're quite common. If you
caught a roach of that size or a bream of that size, you wouldn't get anything like the fight you've just had, would you?
Well, they do pound for pound. They're one of the hardest fighting fish, and as a kid, they were a fish that me and my mates all tried to catch.
Yeah.
We very rarely caught them. They were quite hard to catch in the ponds we fished.
I think I was probably 18 or 19 before I ever caught a carp.
Yeah.
And that was at Cape Thorne Hall on Bacon.
Oh.
I don't know whether Walker wrote about it. Somebody must have written about it.
I'm struggling a bit here. Just let me. I don't necessarily want to overhandle this. I've got my own hooky mat at the bottom. Look.
Yeah, I noticed that, and that's a good tip, isn't it?
Well, you got to use one. I can't see the sense in not using one, really, even on smaller fish.
I think you're over netted.
Well, I mentioned the net earlier, but And now you can laugh at it, and I understand why. I mean, it's just really overkill. But I've done it on purpose, because if you get a 20-pound carp and you've got a little spoon net, it might be the biggest fish you're ever likely to catch in your life, or have caught at that stage, and then you lose your chance. If you're on your own, you're not going to be able to net it. I'd much rather faff about with a little fish in a big net than try and faff around with a big fish and not get it in.
Let's talk about bait, shall we?
Yeah.
You seem to have quite an assortment here. The first two, I understand, meat.
Yeah, chopped meat.
And corn. That's pretty straightforward. Now, what about this stuff here?
Well, this is meat and crushed trout pellet. So it just gives it a little bit of an extra.
How do you do this?
Just put it through a maggot riddle. You just slice it to about 1/8 of an inch, and then in discs or squid or whatever the tin is, and then just lay them on top of an ordinary maggot riddle, push them through, you know, all the little squares through, and it cubes it, for want of a better word, and then you just.
But there's a flavouring, isn't there?
Yeah, I've dusted it down with crushed trout pellet just to give it that little bit extra, you know.
And being
potency.
moist, I suppose the trout pellet powder, as it would be, adheres to it, adheres to the bait.
It does. It dries it off a little bit. It also makes it. You can get some tins of meat that are very, very buoyant. You know, fat content, etc. I mean, it is a science. It's like one of the, the pace and everything like that. Anglers today on commercial waters have taken it to another level compared to what we used to do.
I remember when we first were introduced to meat, which would be Ron Lees, wouldn't it, in the 70s, the meat master on the River Severn.
Yeah.
But he just used to take it straight out of the tin, didn't he?
Well, I first started
ham with pork.
Yeah, I didn't know much about barbel fishing in the 70s. I joined a local Knots Anglers Association in '69, and we used to fish the ponds down at Bestwood, and we fished luncheon meat for carp. Very, very straightforward. Didn't have any buzzers or bite alarms. Just a piece of cigarette foil over the line of the butt, and a brick, and then you used to cast out on an Arsley bomb, paternoster, and a piece of luncheon meat, just hooked on. And the bite was the line being picked up and the foil. And you sometimes could hear it dragging. It was so exciting as a youngster. One
of the most extraordinary things that I remembered reading was, do you remember John Sidley, the old eel and pike angler? And he used to put a 50p piece on top of his reel with an open spool, and underneath he had a hubcap.
Yeah, I've heard that from some of the...
it's true.
Some of the old carpers used to do that. But the thing was, you talk about drag and, all these hangers and swingers and butt indicators. I mean, if there's some tow on the water or undertow and it used to start pulling the foil, you just put a bigger brick on. that was how technical it was.
Right. And what's this stuff?
And that's just a bit of paste. I brought just basic baits here.
And is this something you make up yourself?
Yeah, it's just trout pellets with boiled water and then swim stim added to it, and then a little bit of ground bait just to bolster it up, really, to make it go a bit further. I mean, you can add other things. Some people add eggs, some people add sausage meat, but it's fairly straightforward. Just say there's not many people down here. Just one point I wanted to make about the luncheon meat. Just going back to that, David. When we fished on the meat, there was two types you could get from Woolies. There was cheap stuff, and I don't know what it was called, but say spam. And the cheap stuff outfished the expensive stuff 10 to 1. So you could have expensive stuff and cheep stuff, and the cheap stuff.
Plum rolls was what?
Yeah, that was probably the expensive one, and this other one was like I don't know, Winfield's own brand, and it was horrible. It tasted really salty. It was gritty. It's probably got hooves in it and all sorts, and yet that was the one. So going back to being a youngster, there was some association with, different types of meats being more effective than others, and I remembered that.
Some fish there, isn't there?
Yeah, you see the float nudging around from time to time, and there's also big temptation to strike when it does that, but you have to try and sit on your hands, as Marksy used to say, and wait for the float to go away, because it's normally the fin just rubbing against the line.
Having come from a coarse fishing background and a match fishing background, you and I grew up with the likes of Kevin Ashurst and Ivan Marks, and always when they asked the question, how should I feed, when should I feed, how much should I feed, There was always the same one sentence angler, wasn't it? A one sentence answer.
Little enough.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But you know, when I first launched Coarse Fisherman back in 1975, I had to familiarise myself with the specialist side of the sport. And whilst I was familiar with Walker and Fred J, as we all were, I was very, very pleasantly surprised when I met the likes of Rod Hutchinson and Bruce Ashby and Bob James, and these were super anglers, you know. They could fish, and still can in the case of Bob James. I mean, he's still around, still catching fish. That looks like a bite.
Yep. Almost better.
Is it?
Yeah.
What is that rod you're using? A powerful little rod, isn't it?
It's actually rated at 2 3/4. It's a travel rod. You can actually pack it away to about 18-inch pieces. So yeah, and it's based on a bass rod, an American.
Spinning rod.
Yeah, they call them largemouth bass or something like that. I don't know. And I was using it's one that I sort of helped to develop, and it's got a lot of backbone.
It's been interesting today because you've had 7 or 8 fish while I've been here.
Yeah.
But they make that one run, don't they?
The funny things, I mean, these are like a cross between a common and a koi. And my experience with common carp, whether it's just unique to me, I don't know, but they seem to head towards you at tremendous speed, and then get underneath the net and then start
go bananas,
lolling about like this one's attempting to do now.
It's better fish.
Yes, lovely fish.
That's what struck me today.
Come here. Ooh, that was close.
How inept you are.
I'm just playing to the audience. Really.
No.
So kind.
What struck me today is most of these fish look like they've never been caught, don't they?
Yeah. I mean, the stocking policy down this place is pretty good, I think, and a nice clean fish. You do get that on some waters where fish aren't as pretty, but it's not just the quality of fish, it's the actual colours on these. In the winter, they do bring out the best of the colour in the fish.
Well, I think when I spoke to you on the phone and you said, come down and let's do some fun fishing, this really has been fun fishing, hasn't it? I mean, you're fishing down the edge, you've thrown in probably 50 pence worth of bait.
Yeah.
And it's been most enjoyable.
Well, if you can imagine, I've fished all my sort of match career, and on the Trent, the biggest carp I ever caught was 13 pound in a sort of 15-year, pretty strong career. You can come down here. That's
Look at
not
that,
the
that's
biggest
scale
one.
perfect, isn't it? What a beautiful fish.
Yeah.
I've been here now for about 3 hours with Jan, and it's the first time I've ever experienced this kind of fishing. And his analogy was absolutely spot on, that it's fun fishing. He hasn't caught any great big fish, but anybody who would come to a fishery like this and have the kind of sport, and in a way it sort of takes you back to your childhood. But it's been wonderful and I've thoroughly enjoyed it, and I hope we can catch up with you again sometime. Bye for now.